Hey, we're being live streamed, it says.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
There
Good.
we go. Welcome, everybody.
Hi. Hey, everybody. Cheryl's going to kick us off today.
Welcome to the Weekly Roundup for March 24th, 2023. Hello. I thought I'd kick it off today. A couple of my clients were, really starting to look at how to combat the summer slump that some of us feel. Now is a good time to think about it. It's going to, planning now is essential. If you don't already have some ideas in place. We were talking earlier that sometimes even just the mindset of the studio itself can indicate to your students that, if you've seen a drop off in the past and you make a big schedule change for the summer to combat it, then that sort of tells people right away, like, well, people don't come in the summer, and so we change our schedule a lot, and therefore you're kind of telling your students that you don't need to come in the summer. So that could be something to think about, like not changing your schedule too much. I mean, tweaks are necessary. Oh, there's Josh. Hey, welcome.
What's up, guys?
Yeah. So we're talking about the summer slump and how to combat it. And so thinking in those terms, obviously there are some areas of the country that you might need a little adjustment in your schedule, but think about how those changes could be perceived by your students. Something else that really helped us was when we got our pricing really dialed in, and that membership, a monthly membership, was priced just right to where 2 classes a week or more was the ideal practice frequency. We started to not see a huge drop in our summer revenue. We would see that in the attendance a little bit, but not the revenue. So, that was something to think about there. Vicki, did you have something to add?
Yes. So something that comes to mind for me when talking about the summer slump is because I've gone back to live in Sweden now. All the studios in Sweden, they do summer cards. They call them the summer card, the summer membership. So I think it's, different areas people practice or they don't practice in summer. Sweden's a little bit extreme in that people really do take a long holiday in the summer and they like to go to the summer houses. I saw some statistics on this, that 50% of the Swedish population have access to a summer house. This is fascinating. Access to, as in like their extended family or something, they own it or they rent it or something, but they will go away from town or their normal house and go and stay out in the forest or lake or something. So a lot of people do go away. So it's probably warranted in a lot of places there to reduce the schedule a little bit. But then it's the summer cards. Then I'm like, okay, buy your summer card now. And they do this every year. The studios will do this every single year. And I'm thinking, like, why do you do that? You're drawing people away from a membership onto something discounted, and then they've only signed up for these 3 months. And then what happens? Like, how do you get them back? So I guess what they're trying to do is to bring in some revenue in some way to combat the summer slump. But I don't think that these summer cards are the way to do it. So how to do it? I don't know. I don't know. What I say to these Swedish studios when they're like, well, I'm going to do my summer cards. Josh knows.
Look, I'm maybe a little more fired up about this because I just did a webinar for Moto Yoga on this, and we've been talking about it on the coaching crew a lot. But straight up, the summer card, summer sale thing, it doesn't fucking work. Like, I can't say it more clearly than that. There is no scenarios in no market anywhere in the planet with no individual studios ever that I've seen it where selling some sort of summer deal prior to summer, which then undermines your regular pricing because it's a better deal, results in that studio in the next 6 months of time making more money. We've never seen, you'll make more money in May when you sell it, and then that's it. Like, it totally screws your cash flow in the vast majority of cases. Now, the other thing that I would challenge here, and not Vicki, but like Vicky's highlighting this really interesting thing that happens in the yoga world is every market of yoga studios really do believe that they're special, right? Like you ask I'm from Canada. So like you ask the Canadian studios, they're going to say the same thing Vicky just said. Oh, well, it's so cold and there's snow. And so like once that summertime's here, people leave. Like where our studio was, it was everyone. It wasn't lake houses, is everyone has an RV, like everybody. They're like everyone has an RV, they go to the mountains, they go camping, they don't want to come inside and practice. So like before anything's even happened, we're like perpetuating a mentality around practice and around what's going to happen in a really extreme way. You go to Florida where it's a totally different dynamic, right? And then there it's like, oh, well, the snowbirds are only here during this time of year. And the tours like this, and then the students come back during this. So in these curb seasons, like people don't want to practice. And the point would be, I think a lot of awareness as an owner around thinking something to be true because it's the cultural conversational norm where you are. You have to be careful with that because you might accidentally like just create this perpetuated narrative within your business, which then that is what's going to happen. Like if you tell all your students and you tell all your staff and primary communications, oh, it's summertime in Sweden, everyone goes to their lake house, we're not going to have a lot of people practicing, then guess what happens? Like that's what people do. So that would be my first thing. But then pricing specifically, I think not undermining your pricing is really important. So the specific detail of what you price, if you're going to do some sort of summer thing, matters. I don't think you need to do it at all. The one version of it that I've seen that does kind of work is you just change or add an existing membership that it's not because it's summer, like you don't call it the summer pass, but the pass is like, get 4 months for X and then the next month you say get 3 months for X and the next month you say get 2 months for X. And it functions a little closer to like an intro pass. The idea being you could sell one in May, you could also sell one in June. Someone could also buy in July. Theoretically, you could buy one in August. So like it's not about getting like a big deal just for summertime. It's a number of months of time, and then every month you change the price slightly, and it takes the place of something like your intro. And the price point of that would be, not to make it cheaper than your auto pay. So the hyper specific detail would be, let's say you're selling from May to the end of August, right? So you have a 4-month pass. The total price would be like, get unlimited yoga. You don't even say months. You say get unlimited yoga until the end of August for X dollars. And if they purchased it on May 1st and used every single week available, then it would be just slightly cheaper than the auto pay for the 4 months. But as soon as you get to like May 15th, it's no longer a better deal. So for anyone your auto pay, it's only for the person who's, one, paying enough attention to make the calculation, and two, coming so frequently and so consistently that they want to save the extra $20 or something. So it makes it basically irrelevant. And for that person, you wouldn't lose out because you're still getting all the cash for those 4 months or whatever. There's my 2 cents. I could keep going, but I'll let you guys little hands up.
But just a couple of thoughts. The only caveat I would add to that in terms of a summer type pass would be, I did this. So of course it was right because I did it. And I had a lot of clients that had college students that came home for the summer, right? And I know like sort of like the inverse of a semester pass. Like one of my clients does really well with a semester class because she really is in a really big college town. So that makes sense. So I sort of had the inverse of that. It's like, hey, your kid coming home for the summer. And I priced it about, I think I did it 2 months, and it was about the price of an auto pay, and they just paid it up front. So that was more for a convenience for the parents than anything. It wasn't really hugely advertised. I didn't like, it was just like, hey, your kid coming home, grab this. And I would usually sell a handful of them, which was great. The other thing is going back to what Carol said way at the top, was about mindset. is absolutely, I believe, flipping that narrative, because I can tell you, and having a plan leading into summer, like doing like a spring open house, maybe a challenge, something that rolls into the summer so that people are excited about practicing in the summertime. And I was a hot yoga studio outside of Boston in the summertime, where sometimes literally we did not even have to turn the heat on for the evening classes because my studio tended to be pretty humid. So we would joke we could do Beaker in the parking lot. My classes, were they as full as winter? No, but they were still pretty darn full. And here's the thing, starting in 2018 and 17, 18, and 19, my July and August were better than my January and February's. So the first I was like, what is this myth of the summer slowdown? And I think part of it was to the mindset point, is we just go in expecting it to slow down, but it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to. Slowing down in terms, like Vicky said, in terms of attendance, yes, but revenue, no. It's also a good time you can do like during the summer months too, I did a member appreciation event in July, right? And people really look forward to that. We just did like a picnic in the park. So these are some of the things you can do for member retention during the summer as well. And fun things you can do, yoga in the park, whatever it is, all these type of things, you can start planning them now so that they're all ready to go and people get excited about practicing yoga in the summer, as opposed to, oh, everybody goes away, nobody practices. Alex.
All good thoughts. I was thinking about this, for instance, people that are thinking about opening a studio. What's systemic in the yoga world, in the studio world, is it's a copycat type business. So, and it's also a lifestyle business in the sense that, so those are good things. And as somebody who's thinking about opening a studio, they may be practicing in a relatively urban area, and then they go to a more rural area, or they move to that ideal zone that they want to live and own a studio and be on the beach or whatever it is. And I think one of the things is it speaks volumes to really understanding your demographic and the society and the community as a whole, because as the owner, we feel the attendance on a visceral level. So we can feel the attendance going up through January and the second quarter, and then it starts to drop. And one of the things is that if your business is set up initially to be aligned with that reality, maybe your schedule shifts gradually through the summer and then comes back through the fall, and that is able to capture. And so what we don't want is owners, as we say, we don't feel like you need to suffer for your service, and that internal suffer as an owner that people have, like meaning they're struggling to force people in there. We got to get people into class. We got to do this. But if your business numbers and your pricing and your sales process, and maybe your events marketing throughout the summer are aligned with the reality of your community, it will feel really abundant, right? But if you're sitting there trying to find a January attendance in August, right before everyone goes back to school or what have you, then there's this disconnect and it can feel very lonely. So I think that if you're going to open a studio in a place you've never lived, take some time, learn about the other business, learn about the demographic. If you're opening a studio where you live, well, then the demographic, pay attention to it and make sure your model is aligned with that, meaning your lease, how much you're going to spend, et cetera, because it will make a huge difference on the outcome of what it feels like to run your studio in your demographic.
Wow. Our numbers guy, Alex. Carol.
Great, Alex. Yeah, I was just thinking, I wanted to sort of circle back to the narrative at your studio. And when we started that, I started to think about educating the clients, like, why do you want to practice in the summer? So getting some email campaigns. We had posters up at the studio that explain like the benefits of practicing during the summer. And of course, we rolled that into a summer challenge that the main goal was just to stay, have something consistent and something that they could choose the level that they wanted, whether it was approximately 1 time a week, 2 times a week, or even 3 times a week. So we had this cute Summer 11 challenge, and it was just different levels. But the main goal was just stay consistent, even if it's just 1 time a week, so that it kept them on track. But yeah, I mean, I would talk about it in class as we're leading up to the summer months, like why I enjoy practicing in the summer. So you just have to also think about educating them, and that can make a big difference too. Josh?
Yeah, I would just add the sort of outside of the box thing this has changed in the last years, but like now this would be more true than ever before. Not that it wasn't true in the past, but to Carol's point about like finding ways to engage them. So it's the paradigm shift mentally that you don't need somebody to practice at the same frequency, like Alex was saying, is January. You just need them to not quit. And the reason for this, beyond just that they'll keep paying their membership and et cetera, and that they're happy and the business is still rolling, is additionally the fact that what we're seeing more and more is that there used to be this narrative that was congruent with the like January and then the summer slump, was that then there was like the September boom. And like way back in the day in the hot yoga world, especially, people talked about September like it was another January. And that is absolutely not what we see anymore. It's like, it's changed a lot behaviorally. Now, it's like there's a whole month of slowly getting people back into it. And it's not till October that we have been seeing in the last 5 years-ish. So sort of more of a growth. Now, it doesn't have to be like that, but the point would be, if you lose engagement with people, it's the same idea. Like if you stop marketing, then you have to warm them back up to you and convince them to come back in and reform their habit. So that's actually, in my mind, what you're battling against. Not how many times did you practice this month or how much did you pay me? It's how do I make sure that you don't churn altogether? I don't lose you as a client. So if you practice once a month during the summer, but then as soon as like kids are back in school, you kind of get right back to it and you engage me multiple times and you don't cancel your membership, that's the win. So sometimes I think from the owner level, we've got to shift what we're focused on in terms of what success actually looks like. So here's the outside of the box thought. Rather than it's summer, so let's reduce our schedule, have a sale, and stop spending marketing dollars, leave everything alone and actually spend the same amount on advertising and marketing, but change the focal audience to be your existing clients. The idea being, I go away to the lake house or whatever, but then that they're going to go on some device or something at some point. Like imagine if you have Google ads, Facebook and Instagram ads that are promoted, or promoted posts, or like the frequency of your organic, if you don't want to pay money, like put more time in, is higher. So there's a higher percentage of them that are seeing you. And so every time they're not near you or at the studio, at least they see you. It's interesting content. It's speaking directly to them. Some of them engage. So like you're still part of their reality during that time. To me, that's actually probably one of the ways I would look about solving it. So that then towards the end of summer, anyone who has, been a little teetering and maybe falling off the way then you can like ring them up if you have to. You can text message, you can like personally reach out as a campaign to get them back in rolling again. Yeah, that's my thought on it. Go ahead, Terry.
2 thoughts, and one of them just died of loneliness, so I forgot the one thought. I will say that, I know what I was gonna say. So National Watermelon Day, guys, August 3rd. What to your point about keeping them engaged? Oh, now I remember that other thought. It came back. So one is National Watermelon Day is August 3rd. So this is a time where you can do some like fun, wacky events. And on National Watermelon Day, it's August 3rd, I would just serve watermelon, right? We would have watermelon. I would make watermelon. I would just all day, every class, we would have watermelon. People really loved it. They'd look forward to it. And of course, we posted all over social media and everything. And also what you can do too, when Josh was talking about posting, this was the thought that almost died, is that to engage your clients too is, hey, while you're at the lake house, do some yoga and take a picture and tag us, and have like a contest through the summer, right? And can have like a hashtag. We always did the posture of the month. So it's like, take your, this month it's camel pose or whatever it is, or whatever the posture is. Take your picture and send it to us and we'll post it on your social media. So again, those are some things you can do just to keep that engagement going. Because to Josh's point, if they are engaged, people cancel when they're not engaged. And just because they're not coming to class does not mean they're not engaged with your community. So if they're staying engaged and they're seeing all this stuff happening and all this fun stuff happening, creating a little bit of FOMO, they're less likely to cancel. So what can you do? Just very simple things, doesn't have to be big, just little simple fun things you can do just to target your members and your community over the summer. And then of course, if you are in a tourist area, this is the time potentially where you could have like a traveler special or something like that, an out-of-towner special. They never did well at I mean, we weren't a destination. Chelmsford, Massachusetts was not exactly a destination, but Cape Cod, Massachusetts was, right? So on the Cape, a lot of the studios down there would have like a summer traveler special or something like that. So those are just some fun thoughts. Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point is people's schedules change, right? And so one of the things too, you'll see studios that try to maintain that type of language inside the space with their student base, like, okay, you come in 2 times a week and we're going to do this and we're going to, you know, and they're really sort of urgently trying to, nudge their students to maintain their practice. And to your point, providing a variety of unique events, whether it's yoga outside the space, hikes and yoga, and allowing for the schedule to change, like embracing the fact that not only are your students' schedules changing, kids are out of school, et cetera, but your schedule's changing yourself as a studio owner. The days are longer, maybe you have more time to travel. And so you create sort of this environment where you're really listening to your student base. You're not trying to pull them through to like reoccurring revenue. You're trying to listen to their day-to-day life and create events. And there's just a certain amount of variety, right? It could be food trucks, it could be offsites, it could be, you can just acknowledge like yoga vacation, take a vacation for a minute, come on back, so that when they're away from you, to Josh's point, they are engaged, they are listening, they feel heard. One of the things too, I think of is some people, maybe they practice like 3 days a week at your yoga studio, right? And they're just like so excited, they're yogis, right? But then they feel like they can't maintain that. And so it's an all or nothing thing. We see it a lot, right? Inside an individual student. So they're really into yoga, January, February, March, April, May, and then they can't go 4 times a week anymore. So they just stop. And we have to remind people that a little bit of yoga goes a long way, and it's okay. Right? It's okay. And I think if they feel heard like that, they will be back 3rd week of August or September 15th.
Taking this in a same but like different direction, this is just making me think a lot about marketing and marketing principles in general. And just, we forget in marketing and sales, like over time, as much as we repeat the same principles all the time, we forget the practical application of it. So the one thing that I would point out here is just this entire idea, like beyond the idea that like you should really practice, keep your practice consistent. You're like, all you're doing in bringing that up as the primary conversation in the summertime is highlighting how you think they're not going to practice during the summertime. So like you're pointing at the red button and saying, don't push the red button, which makes everyone look at the red button, right? So there, you have to keep that a little bit in balance. But the other thing here, and Alex is alluding to this as well, is like people don't buy things logically, rationally. They buy them emotionally first, and then they use logic or rationale to back it up. So if you're constantly communicating like practice 2 days a week and it's still the best deal and you shouldn't cancel your membership because that is a completely logical conversation, and it will very likely backfire because you pull them out of the emotional connection to the fact that they are practicing yoga with you. So there are different groups within your yoga studio, but consider that the core group who's really going to pay the bills and be part of your MRR every month, etc., they're the group that has some habituated practice. This is part of their life in some way. And what you're fighting against is that in the summer, they might go through a life shift, and you just want to come with them in the life shift, hence the engagement rather than how many times a week are you practicing. So rather than pointing at the red button and having a logical conversation on a number of times they practice, just talk about yoga. and just talk about how yoga is awesome and just talk about yoga lifestyle and start to relate it to what's happening in your reality. To Vicky's point, do a video of yourself at a lake house doing a yoga practice and describe how, as much as it's nice to get away, part of what's nice about it is I have more time to focus on the meditative aspect of my yoga practice. Like, just insert yourself into their reality and be the source of inspiration and authority for them on the subject matter, rather than looking at it in such a direct, like, if you practice twice, you should still be doing this sort of logically minded kind of way. And really what that alludes to is sales are the starting point for success in a yoga studio. Marketing is an amplifier of your sales. And when you sell well and market well to describe what you do, you create a brand. So what we're talking about around summer is really branding a lot of the time from a marketing perspective, because in theory, if you have a really strong brand, seasonality becomes irrelevant because somebody wants to participate with your brand, right? I mean, the super cliche examples are, do you think that like McDonald's is worried about any month of the year? Like Coca-Cola is like, oh, I don't know if people buy Coca-Cola, and actually, I know I'm on a bit of a rant here, but Coca-Cola did experience in the 80s the problem that they had less Coca-Cola sales. This is when they switched their bottling. That's why that happened. They switched their bottling function, and they did, in fact, have a sales problem in the wintertime because they were selling Coke as this refreshing, and also the new Coke fiasco. Don't even get me started on that. Best big business lesson ever on how to totally fuck up your business, but then how to pivot it back. Like the idea that you can't go back, they did it and it worked. So, but that aside, that fiasco aside, they had less sales in the wintertime in the Northern Hemisphere because they had been selling Coke as a summertime drink for like literally 100 years at that point. So the shift that they made is like Coca-Cola owns Christmas at this point. They own it from color, they own it from music, they own polar bears all of a sudden. Like they've completely inserted themselves into it. And what's totally insane now is that I think it's balanced out, but circa early 2000s, so it took about 20 years, but circa early 2000s, Coca-Cola sells more product of just original classic Coca-Cola in the months of November, December than they do in the summer months, which to me was like super fascinating because you wouldn't necessarily associate those things, but like that's brand. That's the power of brand. There's a lot more to unpack there. I don't even know if we have time for it. Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of brings up, and I think it's hard because what's happening as owners, we are running the studio, let's say 8 months a year, and then all of a sudden we have a change in our community. Like they're responding different to their environment. And so if we can, as owners, anticipate this and look for opportunities. So we flip the narrative, right? We anticipate this coming. It happens to some extent. We don't feed it. We create different unique events, and we look for different opportunities that stay on brand and support it. And that can be offsites and what have you. And it does take a minute because we're cranking out of January, in theory, into second quarter, and everything is humming along, and all of a sudden things change, and we're like we're looking back instead of looking forward. So if we have an opportunity to plan for this, like Vicky was saying earlier, like you're going to plan for this in January, you're going to plan for this fourth quarter of last year, so that you're planning your marketing out. And when it comes, it's like, great, we have all this awesome opportunity. We're doing a collaboration with another studio. We're doing an offsite with multiple places. We're doing a retreat. And all of a sudden it feels abundant, and it's not a big deal because your revenue stays up, practice chips a little bit, and then you're right back into your rhythm again in second or third quarter.
Heck yeah. Mic drop, Alex. I'll just add in to close this off and then move it over to Vicky here. I just think I have to say this because it's like one of my favorite sayings. You don't market when you are slow to get busy. Market when you are busy so you don't get slow. So if summertime has been a stressful ebb and flow moment in the business for you in the past, Right now in March is when you turn up the dial in terms of getting the engine rolling around marketing, messaging, et cetera else. Is now, especially when you plan for what you're going to do there. So it's why the conversation's coming up right now. And if you haven't done a free coaching call yet with one of the coaches, grab a free coaching call and just come on and be like, yo, I need help planning my summer stuff. And you'll do that for an hour, or can sign up for coaching and we'll map the whole entire thing out for you as well. But market when you're busy. So put the pedal to the floor now, get yourself out there more. And then I think what you'll find over time is we see studios all the time that they have months that are way up here and then way down here, and it's constantly going like this. And when we optimize their business operations, sales and marketing, internal messaging, nothing comes down, just everything else comes up and it evens out. And then it's just like this. There's going to be some fluctuation, but then it's like this across the board. So Vicky, but you have some other stuff to bring into the mix today. Let's keep rolling.
All right, so complete change of subject over to something completely different, like Monty Python says. This was relating a little bit to, Josh did a video a couple of weeks ago about running a studio as a co-op. This topic recently came up on a call that I had, and so my question was a little bit like, why does someone want to do this? And the reasons that they have, can we solve those reasons? Can we solve those problems in another way? So my feeling is, or I'm guessing that the main reason people want to do it is they want to share the risk. They don't want to be this one person who's responsible for everything, upon whose shoulders everything will fall. So if something goes wrong, it falls on me. I'm the studio owner and I'm quite alone here. Like they want to avoid that feeling and that risk that they potentially bring themselves into. So then they want to share this somehow with other people. So in this case, I was speaking to someone who was taking over a studio, and this studio had been run as a non-profit before. And the question was, could we somehow still run it in a way that it wouldn't be just one person taking the risk here? For example, one idea was, could all of the teachers just pay rent for their classes? We don't really have a solution for how this is going to practically work, but if everyone is equally interested in, keeping this studio here, and they all just pay, let's say there's like, it's $600 rent and they all pay $100 each. And then it's like, it's not going to fall on one person is maybe going to have to be on the lease, but they're all going to pay and then they're going to get something back. I mean, if we just kind of overlook the potential complications here, is this a way to solve for this sharing of risk? Is there another way you could share the risk, the responsibility, the burden that it can be to be the person who the buck stops with every time? Anyone has something to jump in?
I have a thought on this. I think high level, it really depends on what the group's goal is, right? So if the group's goal is not necessarily to be epically profitable and it's really a service to the community, you might be able to do something like this. I've seen this situation multiple times, and I've seen it grow out of two things. One, wanting to spread the risk. The other, though, is actually to share the abundance. And so what happens is often, I'm thinking of a couple of situations where a large group of really talented teachers work for a really successful yoga studio. And at one point there was a mutiny. And they literally all left with an angel investor and opened this amazing facility with this amazing group of teachers. And it was a co-op, and they all sort of shared in the profits and responsibilities of the studio. 24 months later, it was gone. The other studio was still going for now 20 plus years. So but they again, they may have never defined their goal. Like I don't think all 8 teachers were going to make, $75,000 a year. That may not have been the intention, right? So I do think, and I've seen like spaces be rented, meaning, or like just sort of open spaces where the teachers pay a little bit to rent the space and they can pull in their own students, but there's not a lot of infrastructure, there's not a lot of organization. They promote their own classes and they kind of roll like that. So I do think 2 things. You really do, if it's going to be a business, you're going to need someone to lead the business no matter what. And if your goal is to be profitable and et cetera. But that being said, I do, generally speaking, they have good intention as a group of people. And I've not seen it work very successfully, particularly ever build a really strong brand. Those are my thoughts. Josh?
Yeah, this is a tricky one. So I'll answer in my thought in a couple of ways. The first would be my personal pure experience and opinion, because I don't believe that in business we should ever, or life, ever be so rigidly stuck in one mentality that we say nothing's possible. But my personal opinion and experience is it's the too many cooks in the kitchen problem. Someone has to drive, like someone has to be the end place, or some entity, right, has to be the end decision maker. The buck stops here. We have a difference of opinion that is not solvable, so I don't give a fuck, we're doing this. Like, that system has to exist, which is usually easier if that's an individual rather than a group. But if that isn't there in the yoga studio world, it seems that it falls apart in the long run. The second thought here is beyond my opinion on it, that like, no, you need to have someone who's like driving the ship. It's the idea that, well, I straight up to Alex's point, like I would challenge anyone, if I'm wrong on this, no problem. And I will totally admit it, but like, show it to me. Show me one studio where everyone's getting paid fair market wage per hour that they're putting in, that the studio has high impact in its community, that it also turns profit as a business itself, even if it's registered as a nonprofit, that like there's enough margin there that it can go back into the business and stuff, that's not struggling, and everyone's super happy and it's a copacetic, really positive. Like, show me one, and I will personally go to that studio and spend a month there to learn what they're doing. I promise I will do it, because I have never, ever seen it ever in 20 years of yoga business. I've seen ones that fake that view, but as soon as you look behind the scenes, nothing's actually happening, and they always end up closing, almost always. It was the same idea with the donation only studios. There were a couple that like had like their day in the sun, and there's a few that are left, but to say that that model works is just not generally true. So the end thought that Alex already said too, it's like, if you wanted to really test this in the hard way, the interesting thought would be, rather than sharing the risk, just share the abundance. So build your studio up that it's making tons of money, and then convert it so that everyone who's working in it just gets like an absolute equal split of all the money that's coming in. But I'm willing to bet that if you have a business that's really functioning at that level, where that starts to make more sense, everyone's going to make more, you won't want to do it then, because like what's required to get it there, the risk level, the effort, the energy, the time, the blood, sweat, and tears. So I think that in the yoga world, we see a lot of people desiring a specific business model, but maybe not fully viewing the cost of what would be required for it to work, and or fully admitting to themselves like why it is. Because Vicky, I think you're completely right. The majority of people who say, I want to switch to a co-op, in my experience, it's, if we really press them on it, it comes down to, I don't want the burden of the studio weight on my shoulders anymore. I want to split it amongst more people. That's actually what it comes down to. So if you wanted to test it, I'm not saying you should do this. This is not business coaching recommendation from Josh. But if you wanted to test it, you would operate how the studios here in Sayulita do, where the teacher just gets 50% of whatever the class brings in. They get paid nothing otherwise. You get exactly half of whatever's in the class today, and they only sell individual classes and small numbered cards. That's it. That would be how you test it. And then like, that's as fair as it gets. So the one person still deals with the lease, the marketing, the advertising, all the other stuff. They get half of any class, the teacher gets the other half. So the teacher has only incentive to do a good job participating in everything. And if they don't, their class won't perform and they won't make any money. Now, I could go on a whole rant for an hour on why I'm so frustrated with yoga classes where I live, but that's another story. They're all following that model, right? But like, yeah, anyways.
And I just want to throw out there just to the point of that we mentioned nonprofits, and there is, the reality is, if you do want to run, and I do believe there are some studios that are running as a nonprofit does not mean no profit. A nonprofit studio or a nonprofit organization, at least here in the States, means that the profits go back into something. They either go back into the community, they go back into programs, they go back to fund other things, whatever the programs that the nonprofit has. They need to be financially successful. They need to be bringing money in to pay for all the expenses. So nonprofits does not mean no profit. It means that they do what they take the profit and they do something else with it as opposed to giving it to investors. So I also think, having to Vicky's point and what's been brought up as well is, yes, sharing the risk. There's that, but then to Josh's point, you got to have someone driving the bus. I mean, if nobody's doing all the other things, everybody fails. So someone needs to be in charge of all the operational stuff, which means that person's going to be working. I think human nature is such that, I don't know, it'd be interesting. I just don't see it. I see it as somebody is still going to share the lion's share of the risk, and somebody's going to still share the lion's share of the work. And usually that's what happens in situations like this. And nobody wants to pull their fair share of the weight. They say they do, but they really don't. They don't want to deal with the hair clog in the shower or the vomit all over this bathroom sink from someone, or they don't want to do all that stuff. So it is interesting. I think it's a little bit Shangri-La, right? A little bit ethereal in a way. Alex.
Yeah, I would just add probably this real problem, because you think to yourself, like, there are successful co-op businesses out there that aren't yoga studios or what have you. One of the things is that either a studio is pivoting in this direction, like bringing in an angel investor and a couple other partners, or they're starting out this way. But the challenge is that there's generally no business, like there's no job description, there's no roles, and everyone is not in their lane. Like, if you were to do this successfully, you'd need a leader, you'd need a marketing person, you need a desk person, and everybody stays in their lane and they know the job description, and then they get some sort of profit off the top for their efforts. That maybe could be the case, but often it's like 4 or 5 yoga teachers that really like each other with maybe very little business background, or maybe one person has been in corporate world for X amount of time. So that person inevitably takes the lead, but it's not defined. And then it gets all kind of crazy. So I that's probably one of the biggest problems that you're doomed before you even started, because you're not organized in a professional way from the onset.
Yeah. So Alex, I totally agree.
Oh, I lost you.
You muted
Here we go.
yourself.
I muted instead of unmuted. I agree with what you're saying. And I think that if we're trying to share the burden of the business, the actual deeper question is, because here's the thought, and how you pose this question is really awesome, because it like forces this thought process, right? If I want to become a co-op, why? Well, because I want to share the burden or the weight of the business. Okay, cool. But why do you want to share the burden or the weight of the business? Well, because it's too stressful for me personally with the level of activity and requirement and personal, financial, energetic risk that I'm taking. Okay, cool. So like what we're trying to do is distribute that rather than say, so the co-op as the solution to a symptom, but what's the core problem? Like going even a layer deeper is the way I would look at this. And part of that would be what Alex is alluding to, which is like, just build your business better. Because think about it from, zoom to the most extreme version of a large business. There is no one individual person who holds the total weight of the business. It's like kind of impossible because it becomes so large that there have to be key players. You have to have an organizational structure and accountability chart in place where people are held to, an outcome and have individual responsibilities. Like it must grow to that place because it couldn't possibly, like there's no other way to create enough capacity for the business. So the confusion in small business in general and in the yoga studio world is that we don't need to do that because that's like only for big corporate organizations or it's something for the future. But that's just not actually true. So distribute the burden of the business by building a better business in standard operating procedure, in planning, and in your team. That's the successful solution we have seen for sure 100 times. So if you're the one who's like, well, I want to share the burden and become a co-op, one of the very first questions we would ask is, how many classes a week are you teaching? And if the answer is like, I teach 8, 10, 15 classes a week, and I have to because I need, then the co-op is not a solution. The problem is you're teaching too much and you need teachers. So like, why don't you have teachers, or how do we get more? Like, that's a different issue altogether. So yeah, that would be, I'm not sure I've ever experienced, and I could be wrong, anyone say like, I should turn this into a co-op, but they're a studio owner who doesn't really need to teach, is making lots of money, and has someone managing the studio and stuff. Like the studio is functioning autonomous from them. I'm not sure any of those owners have ever come to me and be like, we should turn this into a co-op, So that would be the first thing. Now, the only other little outside of the box detail that I have to throw into the mix here is, as you know, we're fully switched into the digital era, and what will be scary for some owners over the next, not decade, like 1, 3, 5 years, way shorter time frame, is the speed at which business shifts. We're already in the midst of it. Now, there's a whole rabbit hole there. I'll talk a lot more about, Jarvis, ChatGPT, all these AI bots, etc., as being a component of this. This can seem dystopian and scary, Web3 coming into play, blockchain, etc. And there will be some very difficult moments for small businesses in general in the next couple of years. But on the other side of it is something that's actually way better because it's going to amplify the qualities of yoga, in my opinion. That's for a bigger conversation. The point here related to Vicky's question, though, is already it exists that you could structure a business on blockchain as a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, whereby the legal contract and agreement of all individual parties who work in the DAO, because Vicky asked the question actually in the chat, I know you guys can't see, what about selling shares? Shares are a good idea. The problem with shares in the yoga studio world has been, what do the shares require me to do? If I can just own shares and I am not required to do anything, that makes sense from a portfolio standpoint. But if me buying shares requires me to participate in some way, and then Vicky's opinion is the way I'm participating is not to the quality or on brand enough, and we have a difference of opinion, but now I have legal ownership, now we have conflict. That's where the problem is. What a decentralized autonomous organization creates is essentially, I own shares, Vicky owns shares, Alex owns shares, Carol owns shares, Terry maybe, I don't know, she may not want to buy in, but it's all blockchain stored, and your shares are directly proportionate to your input to the business, separate from anyone's opinion. So if I, stupid example, write 5 emails, and I'm the only one who writes the 5 emails, then they will give me a bigger piece of the pie of what's going on, and therefore a bigger piece of the dividend payout of the business. and that is managed through the smart contract on the blockchain. So no any one individual has control on it at all. It's literally the input of everyone. And if the business total direction needs to shift somewhere, somebody proposes something and calls a vote, and you can write into the smart contract that says a minimum of X people must respond to the vote for it to become a rule. And it has to have a majority of X, Y, or Z. So this is all written into the contract, and it's controlled in the computer, basically, outside of any individual person. So then we could all say, I think the Yogapreneur Collective is going to become this type of company. We all vote on it. It votes in, and boom, that becomes the new vision and directive of the whole organization. And we might never know each other, see each other, meet, talk, nothing. So when we're talking about actual distribution of a company, it does exist in reality now, and this will be an element of what companies structure for in the future. But then we have to bring it back down to reality, because as cool as all of this stuff gets, it's like you're running a yoga studio that's helping to change people's lives by them doing yoga. You know, that structure currently, and the complication and like mental gymnastics for the people involved in it at this point is not designed for you, a mom and pop brick and mortar 1 to 3 location yoga studio, for example, to really utilize that. So what's my point? There are options and future opportunities for this. I think just keep it all in perspective too. Teach really great yoga, pay people fair based on what your business actually does. And like, you shouldn't have a big burden in the company.
I think that's a great way to end.
Everyone's like, I don't even know what to say.
It's just
Yeah.
like, you're just, my mind is just being blown, Josh, because I just, talking about dystopian and all that stuff. It's like everything, all the science fiction that's been written, it, you think about it, it's like you put the thoughts out there, and then does it actually happen? Think of flip phones, right? Star Trek, back in the 60s, their communicators were flip phones, right? So it's just bizarre. It's just too much for this old brain to wrap my head around.
Well, I'll maybe end us with this, because we're at the end of time. Like this bigger conversation that maybe for next roundup we can jump in on it or whatever more. When we're talking about DAOs, we're talking about Web3, we're talking about blockchain, which then automatically people think Bitcoin and et cetera, et cetera. There are 2 paths that are in front of us from a business operational standpoint. And one path is a path of very extreme, borderline tyrannical control from larger entities. And that's a bit scary, but the other path is like a pretty utopian situation where we don't have to have trust, for lack of a better way to say it, in any other individual or group of individual people in the business. We just have to trust that the control mechanism will keep things straight, and everything is distributed based off of the rules that you apply. So it's not about equality in that case, but actual fairness. And to me, yoga is the type of yoga business is the type of business that when the conditions are there and the public understanding is there to a certain level, will be able to naturally, organically calibrate into a system like that. Because we already, the whole conversation being brought up by Vicky, we're already trying to solve for this. The yoga mentality of the business owner is already attempting to figure out, how do we have an equitable situation that benefits the employees and myself, and the business functions properly, and the people are happy, and we're saving the world through yoga. Like we're already there energetically, emotionally. So what's cool about this digital era is that we view energetic, emotional ether in the yoga world versus super scientific, technological, digital advancement as 2 separate things, but everything is yoga. They are the same thing. This is just part of our natural ascension path. So I'm not sure it's something to solve for today or anytime soon, but as we move forward, again, I get super fired up about yoga business in general, because it is poised to be flexible and intelligent and blend and move itself into the world at large to continue to be able to offer a service that we know straight up saves people's lives.
I think what you just described there is, this is what we're always striving towards when we're coaching, when we're building a yoga business, without any kind of blockchain or dystopian sort of futuristic controls. Just having your SOPs in place, paying people fair, having your vision and mission. This is exactly what we're trying to create. So I don't think we need those tech things to achieve it.
No, I totally agree. We're already there. So go do some yoga, teach some great yoga classes, sell some people some yoga memberships, get them practicing. That's it. There's the whole equation. I mean, there's a few more details. So if you want to help with those, book a free coaching call. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Guess that's it for now.